Join the Party is a queer Dungeons & Dragons podcast. D&D is a role-playing game in which a group of players create and play out the activities of a character within an imaginary world. Campaign 2 is a story about modern superheroes, how different people interact with the communities they live in, and how we shouldn't trust people in power blindly. It takes place in a fictional city called Lake Town City. In the 80s, it was just a quiet town near New York City, but one summer, the local scientist, Dr. Cassandra Morrow, accidentally created a new element. But the problem was that the initial creation of it produced radiation that changed the residents. It made the adults age slower and be incredibly good at their hobbies, but the kids that were born soon after got inhuman abilities. The podcast follows 3 of those kids who are now in their late 20s.
Milo Lane, Aggie O'Hare, and Val Vesuvio. Milo is a nerd who loves bowling, works in a museum, and has a connection to the ghost realm. Aggie is the oldest of 7 and can heal people. Her parents retired very early to pursue traveling. That has left Aggie to have to be the reliable one of the family. So she has stayed in Lake Town to take care of the people in the original neighborhood. And lastly, there is Val, a punk Italian American with super strength, whose father's side relatives are also very deep in the mob.
In my opinion, the podcast is beautiful. Especially my favorite topic that is covered is community, how the different characters interact with it, and how the main characters want to protect their neighborhoods. For them, superheroing isn't about the fame. They just don't want to use their powers for personal gains. Another great topic that they cover is governments not helping people who are different. Even though they knew that this radiation gave people superpowers, they didn't do anything about it. Nobody talked about it, so the people with superpowers were left to figure it out on their own. Milo is the best example for this. At the beginning of the podcast, he had almost no control over his ghost powers, but when he did get the help he needed to understand his powers better and not constantly have to keep pushing them down, he gained a lot more control over his powers. A person on Tumblr said that they deeply related to that as a neurodivergent person, and I truly agree. A lot of the time, neurodivergent people grow up knowing that there is something very different about us, but the people around us refuse to acknowledge it. And the topics aren't even the best part of the podcast. I think it's a tone. Since it's generally very light-hearted, some people might just write it off as hollow, but I think it's precisely that makes the more emotional parts so genuine and more tense.
For example, here are 2 of my favorite moments from the podcast that I have edited.
Choose your family, or choose yourself. But those consequences are up to you. You have an hour.
Click.
God damn it.
I heard that the Ropers are just moving down to Boca, and I thought that maybe we should take their house. And would you like that?
I'm not really sure, Mom. We haven't had much of a relationship as I've been an adult, because you and Dad decided to, retire early and live all around the world as soon as my siblings were old enough to go to secondary school or into their careers, and I have kind of taken up that slack for the last, whatever it's been, 10 years now. I've kind of complicated feelings about it. It would be great if we could just kind of talk face to face before you make a life-altering decision, not just for you and Dad, but also for me.
In conclusion, I think that Join the Party is a strongly immersive story with great and realistic characters and covers important topics with a lot of nuance. I would recommend everyone to give it a listen, but if you like Dungeons & Dragons, then it's very likely that you will fall in love with it in the same way that I have.